Welcome to Vinnie Politan Investigates. I'm Julia Jenaé in for Vinnie Politan. Thank you for being with us. The subject of our investigation is the shooting death of Charlie Kirk, a political activist, controversial at times podcaster, and a family man. Here's the story. The public shooting of Charlie Kirk has captured the nation's attention and sparked outrage. Kirk regularly traveled the country speaking to college students. And while on one of those stops, in a crowded space in front of thousands at Utah Valley University, the deadly attack was a long-range shot. Surveillance video recorded the alleged shooter leaving the area, and eventually, 22-year-old Tyler Robinson was taken into custody. He now faces the death penalty amid a mountain of evidence, including DNA. Details uncovered about the alleged shooter include insight into his motivations and what he said to those close to him about the crime. Investigators are continuing to piece together how the assassination was carried out, with many wondering what more will be revealed about the case. Thank you. And what we learned this week is that the county attorney there in Utah is bringing not only those charges, but also seeking this as punishment. Take a listen.
Following the press conference, I am filing a notice of intent to seek the death penalty. I do not take this decision lightly, and it is a decision I have made independently as county attorney, based solely on the available evidence and circumstances and nature of the crime. Because we are seeking the death penalty, the defendant will continue to be held without bail in the Utah County Jail.
The county attorney there talking about this being an independent decision, no doubt because so many people have been outraged over what happened. And that gets us to the first question in our investigation. Many people have questions about this person. What are we learning about Tyler Robinson, the man who's been accused in the shooting death of Charlie Kirk? Here to help answer that question is retired FBI agent Stuart Fillmore and Gray Hughes, the creator and host of Gray Hughes Investigates YouTube channel. Thank you both for being with us. I first want to start by playing some sound, some interviews of people who did know this defendant, people who knew his background, and that's via our affiliate with Scripps News Utah. Take a listen.
Robinson had confessed to them or implied that he had committed the incident.
From his apartment to his family's home, the FBI police combed every inch of Tyler Robinson's life, his family expressing to law enforcement that he had become more political in the last few years.
Robinson mentioned Charlie Kirk was coming to UVU. They talked about why they didn't like him and the viewpoints that he had. The family member also stated Kirk was full of hate and spreading hate.
Neighbors across the community were hurt, confused at what they called a quiet man turned to suspected political assassin.
I just learned a half hour ago, my son called me and said, "Did you know it was your neighbor?" I said, "No."
This neighbor said Robinson used to come over and help her mow her lawn when he was a kid.
Whenever I've needed anything, they've been able to come over and help very graciously and kindly.
So who is 22-year-old Tyler Robinson? We know he was raised in Washington, Utah. Yearbook photos show him in nearby Pineview High School. Robinson attended one semester at Utah State University, but never at Utah Valley, where the shooting happened. More recently, he was enrolled at Dixie Technical College. Administration confirmed in a news release that Robinson is a student in the electrical apprenticeship program.
I heard that he's from St. George, and I'm like, man, that's crazy. And then I see a picture of him, and I'm like, I know this guy. I've seen him. I'm pretty sure I went to school with him.
Carson Knight couldn't believe it as he realized Robinson was a classmate in that program.
What classes were you taking together?
We were taking residential electrical. And I remember where he sat in comparison to me and seeing him every day. From what I remember, he sat by himself in the back of the class. So I don't remember everyone ever sitting next to him.
Gray Hughes, I want to start with you. You've been investigating this case very closely. Tell me what you've learned about the suspect here, and what initially did you want to know when you saw the tragic headlines in this case?
Well, I think everybody tries to figure out why something happens and then, how it took place. And, we find out that, his family is conservative, and I guess apparently he was more like that before, but in the last couple of years he shifted, and he's obviously, he's in a gay relationship with, I think the person's name was like Lance, I can't remember the last name, and so maybe he started changing his opinion based on what other people, like Charlie Kirk, maybe some of his positions that he doesn't like, but it's just so crazy that somebody would go out and kill somebody. I mean, was he killing on behalf of his boyfriend? I mean, what was the reason for the killing? It just seems kind of like it just sort of sprung upon him, and he planned it out. He was looking into it about a week before. I guess the Turning Point Foundation publicized it in late August. And then he started planning this. And you see in his messages back and forth that he had an opportunity to do it, and he took it. And it's still a little bit of a mystery, though. Like, we don't have a lot of information about Tyler Robinson at this point.
Stuart Fillmore, what about you? What stood out to you about his background? And if you are the agents, we know the FBI and local officials who have been digging in to things when it comes to this suspect, what are they still looking for at this stage, despite the fact that we seem to have some confessions and we have a suspect who turned himself in?
Yeah, as an investigator on the ground, my focus would be on physical evidence and tying the suspect to the crime as best you can. The why of it, I'm with Gray. Who can really say why? I know that that's something that has to be asked and has to be looked into. But my focus would have been, hey, let's get all the physical evidence we can. Is there anybody else involved? Is that part of it, or was this just something on his own? Again, it's just sad. It really is. It's one young man, Charlie Kirk, is dead. Another young man, his life is ruined, and he faces the death penalty. So I really just am stumped as to how someone could turn so drastically and take such drastic action.
Yeah, you mentioned him being a young man, 22 years old, and that could be the reason that there's not a lot in his background that police have revealed in terms of a criminal history. But we did get some information about one time that he did have some law enforcement interaction. Let's take a look at that.
Who's the driver? You're the driver?
Yep.
Can you tell me just really quick what happened?
That's Tyler Robinson, age 19, about 3 years before he's accused of shooting and killing conservative speaker Charlie Kirk at Utah Valley University.
I was in one of those two lanes going this way. I think in the rightmost lane coming this way.
In this video Scripps News obtained from police in Utah, he has just gotten into a fender bender, accidentally slamming his Audi into a Ford sedan that turned in front of him at an intersection in St. George, Utah. Neither driver received a citation.
He would have been there going left, and as I was coming through, he turned in, and I T-boned into the side.
In this video, he's cooperative and seems polite.
Just as I left the house, put oil in.
Of course.
Just topped it up.
Welcome to real life.
He tells the officer he's with his brother and that his mom is on the way to help him out.
She's gonna be a minute. She's got to shuttle over from where she's at to her car and then drive over.
Mom, do you have any questions, since you'll probably be taking care of this?
I will be taking care of this, and this is all new for me, but we'll figure it out.
Gray Hughes, anything stand out to you about that clip? And we are learning at least a little bit, not from the court yet, but about the potential that there may be a mental health evaluation here.
Well, in that clip, he seemed just like a normal kid. I mean, I didn't see anything strange at all there. My focus has been on the videos that I've made I've pieced together the entire timeline with video and watching him move around through all the different elements and making his way up onto the roof, up the stairs, and then where he crouched down, and then he sprinted across and he got down in position. Then he runs off the roof, jumps down, goes into the woods, and then there's actually some new surveillance video that was put out today by a person. Well, his name is Chuck, or Charles, and he put it out there. I have a link to it in the last video that I made, and he's walking down the street just before he turns into that, you know, the TMZ video that's out there. So he's actually coming down the street, and he takes a left down that street, and that's at 11:44, and he's limping down that street. So he obviously sort of parked not too far from there, because why would you want to walk a long distance with a rifle in your pant leg? You know,
Right, what did you make of that limp? I saw that in the probable cause affidavit. Was that something they think he feigned, or was it something that actually happened because of everything he was doing?
No. See, the thing is, the limp is before the shootings even took place. So the shooting took place. So he actually, they believe he had a rifle down his pant leg, and he was hiding it. The backpack probably protected the bulge from, poking out his shirt. So while he was walking, he would swing his right leg forward and then move forward more, forcefully with his left leg, and he just kept swinging that leg forward, and he limped all the way through all the different surveillance shots that they have, even up onto the roof, until he went over this short wall, crouched down, and then he took out the rifle, assembled it, and then they see him sprint all the way across and got into the prone position, and that's when he fired, and then he ran off the roof with no more limp anymore. So the limp was before he got onto the roof.
Understood. Stuart, we've got a death penalty case here. Tell me about what else you think the FBI, the local officials, that they need to uncover, or do they need anything more in order to get this not across the conviction line, but also that ultimate punishment?
Well, what's been released publicly, especially in the press conference with the county attorney there, I was amazed at how much detail he gave. And I got to tell you, it seems like a pretty strong case. Usually they don't, you're not going to give away your whole case. They just don't reveal it publicly. So I got to think that they probably still have other stuff that's incriminating to Tyler Robinson. And based on what we know publicly, man, there's a very strong case against him. I think there's a really good chance he's going to get the death penalty in this.
Oh, there's a lot of evidence in this case. We're going to be piecing through it this hour. Stuart Fillmore and Gray Hughes, thank you for your analysis. When we come back, we're going to talk about another piece of this, something that's been mentioned. Could others be involved in this?
My two best friends were just murdered.
Join me for a Court TV true crime series where we take you from the crime scene to the courtroom.
Donna Adelson hates every piece of grass that Dan Marcel ever walked on.
It's something that'll haunt all of us forever.
It always seemed like he was covering or deceiving.
This was a whole different level.
Victim to Verdict with Ted Rowlands, a Court TV original series. Season premieres September 27th.
Only on Court TV.
Investigators reviewed additional video footage from UVU surveillance and identified Robinson arriving on UVU campus in a gray Dodge Challenger at approximately 8:29 a.m. on September 10th, in which he is observed on video in a plain maroon t-shirt, light-colored shorts, a black hat with a white logo, and light-colored shoes.
Welcome back to Vinnie Politan Investigates. What was particularly shocking about the death of Charlie Kirk was that he was shot while peaceably addressing a group of young people at a college campus about different topics. And it led people to wonder what could have sparked this seemingly unprovoked attack. Now, officials have shared some information about what could have led or motivated their suspect in this case, and they used the term radicalized online, leading reporters to ask Utah County Attorney Jeff Gray this question.
Today, after reviewing the evidence that law enforcement has collected thus far, I am filing a criminal information charging Tyler James Robinson, age 22, with the following crimes. Count 1, aggravated murder, a capital offense, for intentionally or knowingly causing the death of Charlie Kirk under circumstances that created a great risk of death to others.
just asking, are you planning to file additional charges against anyone else in connection with this?
Again, we don't have any information at this point of additional suspects, but I know that our law enforcement agencies are continuing to follow leads.
And that leads us to the next question in our investigation. There it is. Could others be involved in this? Let's bring in our guests who are going to help us break this down. We have former homicide detective and host of the Interview Room with Chris McDonald. It's Chris McDonough with us, and retired FBI Special Agent Bobby Chacon. Thank you both for being with us. Chris McDonough, I want to start with you. What have you learned as you followed this case about whether or not anyone else could be implicated in this tragedy?
Well, just like any other investigation as a whole, Julia, the one thing the investigators are going to do is they're going to create what they call patterns of life. And in that, they're going to try to re-engineer exactly who this young man was talking to, the type of digital devices and the areas of communication that he would potentially go into. And that's what they've done here. The FBI's done an amazing job, and this is a fluid investigation still, and they're still trying to put those pieces together.
Let's look at what the FBI Director Kash Patel did have to say about this, because he was asked at length about this issue. And he said, unfortunately, it has been leaking that there was a Discord chat, and that those unfamiliar with that, it's a gaming chat room online that this suspect participated in. He said, we're also going to be investigating anyone and everyone involved in that Discord chat. And Patel told the committee that he was speaking to that there were, quote, a lot more than 20 other users in the chat, and the FBI is running them all down. Bobby Chacon, what does that look like when you are chasing down users in a gaming chat? What are the challenges at times with figuring out who is connected to some of these profiles?
Yeah, well, the big challenge is the hiding behind a profile. So the profiles, that's one of the things about Discord and some of the other platforms a lot of these people use. It allows them a certain measure of anonymity. Now, you can track them down. It takes a lot more time, and you may have to subpoena some of the records from the service providers. But the FBI has a social media exploitation team made of local, state, and federal authorities who are experts in this kind of field. They're tracking these things down to see what these conversations consist of. It doesn't look, in this case, like anyone gave him material support. We know where the weapon came from. We know where the ammunition came from. There didn't seem to be a whole lot of other financial support needed to carry out this attack. But certainly if people were, supporting him in this and kind of like encouraging him to do that, those are people we want to track down and talk to.
Chris McDonough, what, in your opinion, rises to the level? Because Bobby is talking about that. If it's encouragement, does that get to the point of solicitation? What kind of language do we have to see in order for this to be something prosecutors can actually bring in front of a judge?
Well, like Bobby's talking about, there has to be some type of overt act where they participated in the, encouragement and or they help. Let's say, for an example, one of the things the FBI is going to do is pull the telematics out of that car. If that vehicle is moving at any time that shot is fired, they're going to be really interested in that type of data. And then they're going to try to connect, well, who's driving that car potentially? So that would be an overt act during the commission of the homicide.
Bobby, let's talk about this, because you're a retired FBI special agent. So I know you've been tracking cases for many, many, many years. Would you say that this is, if there are charges brought from the people in the chat group, would this be a shift when it comes to this, quote, being radicalized online, which is what police have said has happened here? And what comes to mind is other shooters like Dylan Roof or the shooter of Gabby Gifford. They use that language as well, but we never saw charges come down for people who would have been part of perhaps this radicalization. Is this a shift in your opinion, or are there other cases where those who are online, who may have been speaking about things that we would find offensive, lead to charges?
Yeah, Julia, I'm also an attorney, so I know there's a novel legal concept out there. The only thing that this harkens me back to is a few years ago, a young lady encouraged kind of a young man who was enthralled with her, and she wasn't interested. She kind of encouraged him to commit suicide through text. And they weren't just like, hey, go jump off a bridge. They were really in-depth and a lot of text. And I believe she got convicted of, contributing to his suicide. And so I think that was a novel legal theory in that case, but it certainly is a precedent for people that, take those extra steps. Now, it can't be just words. We do have freedom of speech. If if I do tell someone to go jump off a bridge and they do it, I can't be held liable. But there's a certain line now that we know, because that young lady in that case, where that young man committed suicide, was held liable. So knew though there is a legal line. Now, where that line is, a prosecutor is going to have to determine, depending on the statutes that they charge him under.
It's an important conversation, and we will see where the investigation leads. We, of course, still have both the local and federal authorities saying that they are continuing to follow leads in this case. Bobby Chacon and Chris McDonough, thank you so much for your analysis. When we come back, we have more in this case that we're digging into, the text messages. What do the text messages between the suspect and his partner reveal? Welcome to Vinnie Politan Investigates. We continue our investigation into the shooting death of political activist Charlie Kirk. It's an investigation that is taking us inside the mind of an accused killer, a man now facing the possibility of the death penalty. Here's the story. It was a moment that shocked people around the nation. The public long-range shooting of political activist Charlie Kirk on the campus of Utah Valley University. Video of the shooting circulated fast as the crowd of 3,000 plus scattered. In the wake of tragedy, officials shared lots of insight into their investigation of the accused shooter, 22-year-old Tyler Robinson, a student from another school. Law enforcement explained the unusual lead-up to his arrest, and they say he confided in both his parents and a roommate who was also reportedly his romantic partner about carrying out the shooting. Those statements may provide some answers in this case, but they also raise even more questions. Oftentimes in an investigation, it takes some time before we get more information, more detail. Sometimes we don't get it until a trial. But the county attorney there in Utah gave this information at a press conference that he said because they don't have the grand jury process in that county, that they had to detail everything out in a preliminary hearing. And we were able to hear word for word the most damning text messages that prosecutors say they have at this point.
On September 10th, 2025, the roommate received a text message from Robinson which said, "Drop what you're doing, look under my keyboard." The roommate looked under the keyboard and found a note that stated, quote, "I had the opportunity to take out Charlie Kirk, and I'm going to take it." Police found a photograph of this note. The following text exchange then took place. After reading the note, the roommate responded, "What? You're joking, right?" Robinson, "I am still okay, my love, but am stuck in Orem for a little while longer yet. Shouldn't be long until I can come home, but I gotta grab my rifle still. To be honest, I had hoped to keep this secret till I died of old age. I am sorry to involve you." Roommate, "You weren't the one who did it, right?" Robinson, I am. I'm sorry." Roommate, "I thought they caught the person." Robinson, "No, they grabbed some crazy old dude, then interrogated someone in similar clothing. I had planned to grab my rifle from my drop point shortly after, but most of that side of town got locked down. It's quiet, almost enough to get out, but there's one vehicle lingering." Roommate, "Why?" Robinson, "Why did I do it?" Roommate, "Yeah." Robinson, "I had enough of his hatred. Some hate can't be negotiated out. If I am able to grab my rifle unseen, I will have left no evidence." Going to attempt to retrieve it again. Hopefully they have moved on. I haven't seen anything about them finding it. Roommate, how long have you been planning this? Robinson, a bit over a week, I believe. I can get close to it, but there is a squad car parked right by it. I think they already swept that spot, but I don't want to chance it. Robinson again, I'm wishing I had circled back and grabbed it as soon as I got to my vehicle. I'm worried what my old man would do if I didn't bring back Grandpa's rifle. IDEK if it's had a serial number, but it wouldn't trace to me. I worry about prints. I had to leave it in a bush where I changed outfits. Didn't have the ability or time to bring it with. I might have to abandon it and hope they don't find prints. How the F will I explain losing it to my old man? Only thing I left was the rifle wrapped in a towel. Remember how I was engraving bullets? The F in messages are mostly a big meme. If I see notice bulge UWU on Fox News, I might have a stroke all right. I'm gonna have to leave it. That really effing sucks. Judging from today, I'd say Grandpa's gun does just fine, IDK. I think that was a $2K dollar scope. Wink, wink. Robinson again, delete this exchange. Again, Robinson, my dad wants photos of the rifle. He says Grandpa wants to know who has what. The feds released a photo of the rifle, and it is very unique. He's calling me, RN, not answering. Robinson, since Trump got into office, my dad has been pretty diehard MAGA. Robinson, I'm going to turn myself in willingly. One of my neighbors here is a deputy for the sheriff. Again, you are all I worry about, love. That came from Robinson. Roommate, I'm much more worried about you. Robinson, don't talk to the media, please. Don't take any interviews or make any comments. If any police ask you questions, ask for a lawyer and stay silent.
And despite that instruction to stay silent, we know that roommate did almost immediately cooperate with police. That's why they have these text messages. And it leads us to the next question in our investigation. And that's, what do the text messages between the suspect and his partner reveal? Let's bring in our guest to help us answer that question. We have retired FBI agent Stuart Fillmore with us, and joining us, psychotherapist and CEO of Life Counseling Solutions, Dr. Jenaé Lacy. Thank you all for being here. Let's start with you, Dr. Jenaé. We have here more detail than we usually see from a suspect. It almost reads like a transcript of a suspect who's being interrogated, because he's answering all of the questions that many people would want to know, certainly that police want to know. What's standing out to you when you're reading along with these messages?
Well, Julia, a lot stands out to me. You know, first, this is a critical role of this intimate relationship in this that's going to play out in this criminal investigation. But, you know, Robinson's partner essentially became, as you said it, he became a confession recipient, someone he trusted enough to share this devastating secret with. And the language he uses, calling him my love, shows he was potentially seeking comfort and understanding from someone he believed would support him emotionally, even after committing this murder. But what was particularly concerning is how Robinson can compartmentalize this planning. He was living with his roommate, and from the text messages, his roommate did not know, and it appeared so. So he's living with his romantic partner. He's maintaining probably normal routines where he was secretly plotting, as he said in this past week, an assassination. So to me, this suggests he either can sophisticate in his sophistication and his emotional detachment, or, you know, possibly, right, I don't know enough, but some underlying psychological disorder that allows him to maintain this dual existence, Julia.
Stuart, I want to talk about these text messages in something that some have questioned. I want to know if you think it's questionable, especially when he's talking about, he's using different words that some are saying sound more like an officer or very official language versus casual 22-year-olds talking back and forth, including when they talked about interrogating. They're asking about catching the person, and Robinson says, no, they grabbed some crazy old dude and interrogated someone in similar clothing. He grabbed a rifle from a drop point, and the vehicle is still lingering. The squad car is there. He also says, I think they already swept the spot. Is there anything that you find questionable about the way this text message exchange is? And do you often see this much detail from a suspect where they're just giving the evidence against them in a back and forth?
Well, Julia, I mean, the question in this segment is, what do the text messages reveal? You know, just to sound, I guess, kind of flippant for a second, that's what we would call a clue. You know, in this case, it's a whole slew of clues. And he effectively lays out his own conviction in these series of text messages. But as far as the wording goes, it is some very strange wording. That was one of the first things that I noticed. I don't know anybody that really uses the word vehicle other than maybe police, public information officers, when they're talking about that there was a wreck somewhere and two vehicles collided. But you just don't really hear that in normal speech and conversation, which would include text messages. So yeah, some of the wording is really weird. And I'll apply this anecdotally to my own life. If say, for instance, you know, I did this and my wife reached out in a text message, and I somehow confessed in the text message that I just done this, there wouldn't be any more text. She'd be calling me, you know, and this would not be a text conversation. Maybe that's a generational thing. But yeah, I do find the wording a bit stiff, a bit almost too good, to be quite honest.
And it's interesting. We don't know more of the details and how it compares to how he spoke normally. Dr. Jenaé Lacy, just I want to give you the final word here, because some are asking, did he want to be caught? He laid it out in such a way, and he ultimately turned himself in, which he says in the text messages. But do you think that was his plan or desire all along?
I think it's probably a certain level of comfort would be my suggestion if this is his romantic partner. And even on Discord, you know, a lot of times in today's digital age, criminals often leave an extensive electronic trail, especially, you know, as my colleague was mentioning, the generation, that's their form of communication, that's their form of connection. And these platforms essentially inadvertently become a confession booth in many of these cases. So I think if there was a normal way, if that's how they communicated and that's how they talk to each other, then I would imagine he was just going along with what was normal to him. It's hard to say if he was doing it deliberately to get caught or not. I would have to look at the big picture of how they were communicating and what was their normacy before this had happened. That would be my thoughts, Julia.
Dr. Jenaé Lacy and Stuart Fillmore, thank you for helping us break down this important case. We still have more ahead. And we're going to ask the question of what's really ahead. What's next for Tyler Robinson?
Sheriff Smith's like, wait, what are you talking about? So he was shocked, as I was, to hear the news.
8.5 months pregnant, a young mother found brutally murdered.
To lose a child, there's no words for it.
Now the victim's boyfriend, a married father of 4.
Guilty of first-degree murder in the death of his mistress, as well as their unborn child.
That's one of the things that struck me. He was not remorseful.
Court TV takes you inside the South Florida courtroom,
where jurors will decide if he will be put to death.
The pregnant mistress murder trial penalty phase begins Wednesday morning, only on Court TV.
DNA consistent with Robinson was found on the rifle's trigger. After shooting Mr. Kirk, Robinson hid the gun, discarded the clothing he wore when he fired the rifle, and told his roommate to delete incriminating text messages.
It took 33 hours for the suspect in a public shooting of an unarmed college speaker would be captured. And while the public sat waiting for news of the end of this manhunt and how this arrest would unfold, what they heard was unexpected. Take a listen.
Obviously, we knew Charlie Kirk was assassinated at UVU in the afternoon. About a 33-hour manhunt ensued. and I was winding down for the evening. And at exactly 8:02 on the 11th, I received a call from a friend of mine who happens to be a retired detective that worked for me for many years. He said, "Hey, I know who Charlie Kirk shooter is. I know the family through religious association, and he's in Washington County now, and we're working on trying to get him to come in voluntarily." During that phone call, some information was provided about Tyler potentially having some suicidal ideations, was en route to a remote area of Washington County. The parents convinced him not to do that, and conveyed that they would stand by him and help him surrender peacefully. So at that point, that phone call was 1 minute and 41 seconds. I immediately called Sheriff Mike Smith in Utah County, who I knew was at the incident command in Utah County. So for about 40 seconds, I'm telling Sheriff Smith, "Hey, I'm confident we have the shooter in Washington County. We're working on getting him to come in and surrender at my office." We didn't have him yet. He said, "How credible is it?" I said, "I trust this guy that called me with my life. And I think it's time you need to get your people, the lead investigators, headed to Washington County." Within the hour, my friend drove Tyler and his parents to my office, where he was greeted by plainclothes detectives. So that was part of the deal. Is Tyler knew it was just inevitable with all the law enforcement pressure that his picture in the news, the gun on the news. He knew it was inevitable that he would be caught. He was fearful of a SWAT team hit on his house, or he was fearful of being shot by law enforcement. So part of the negotiation and getting him to bring himself in was that we would treat it as delicate and as soft as possible to make him feel comfortable to where he would show up at my office, and that's exactly what happened.
That was Washington County Sheriff's Office lead sheriff Nate Brooksby speaking there about the end of that manhunt and how it all unfolded. And it would really become the beginning of this high-profile case. So that gets us to the last question in our investigation. What is next for accused assassin Tyler Robinson? Let's bring in our guests who are going to help us break that down. We have with us federal white-collar crimes advisor and sentencing mitigation expert Sam Mangle with us, and criminal defense attorney and former prosecutor Lindsay Richards. Sam Mangle, I want to start with you. This is a case where the prosecution has filed their notice of intent to seek the death penalty. How complicated does that turn a case once that file hits the docket?
Well, obviously, each state's process for adjudicating and determining death penalty is different. I can only speak of what will happen if he is convicted, found guilty, and then subsequently determined that the death penalty is the most appropriate, for him. Right now, you're seeing him being held on a suicide watch. That's why he's wearing a green suicide smock. It's something that you can't rip, tear. There's no chance that he can commit suicide. Goal now is to keep him alive for trial and justice. This young man killed a father, a husband, and what's in store for him will be, in some ways, he will be looking forward to the death penalty. Being in a Utah State prison, unless he's on protective custody, he's in many ways similar to Brian Kohlberger, except his end might be more determining. So what's in store for him? Nothing good. What he did was heinous, and the people and the other inmates where he goes will realize that.
Lindsay Richards, we listened together to the way that he was handed over to police, the way he turned himself in. Is that going to have any impact on this case? If not the guilt phase, perhaps the sentencing phase?
Right. So the interesting thing about Utah and the death penalty and the way that they've charged him is that they've charged him with aggravated murder. And they have to show that the aggravating circumstances outweigh any mitigating circumstances in Utah, under Utah law. So, we don't know what these mitigating circumstances could be. I think it's safe to say that this is headed towards a trial of some kind. I mean, if he's facing the death penalty, he doesn't really have much of a choice other than just to go to trial. I think most lawyers would agree with that. But the way that they've charged him essentially is the aggravating circumstance is that he put others at risk of death and harm. And so that's the way that they've charged it in Utah, to make it an aggravating circumstance. And I think it's safe to say firing a bullet into a crowd puts others at risk of death and harm. And so I don't think they're going to have much trouble proving that. But certainly the way that he maybe turned himself in, being suicidal, those could potentially be, for whoever his attorneys end up being, the mitigating factors that they would present in this trial.
And Sam Mangle, no doubt these defense attorneys are going to be trying everything to get a deal, to get death off the table. But do you think this is one of those cases? You mentioned the Idaho University student killer who did get a deal and shocked a lot of people in the public. Do you think that this is one where prosecutors will not budge on a deal?
From what I've seen so far, between the group of prosecutors that are currently on the case, and certainly the public perception and pressure that's going to be and has been exerted by very, very high officials from the president down, I do believe that this will be pursued as a death penalty case. And I'm not giving a legal opinion. I think I'll leave that for the attorney. But just looking at it from my point of view and the way I've seen other trials and sentences happen in the white collar arena, I have no doubt that the government and the state of Utah will pursue this to the fullest extent as a death penalty case.
Lindsay, do you think there's anything that could come out in a perhaps mental health evaluation that could change that position for prosecutors?
I certainly think there could be things that come out in a mental health evaluation. I am not a psychiatrist of any kind, but I think it's safe to say he probably suffers from some sort of mental health issues. Now, whether that's going to deter anyone from continuing to seek the death penalty, probably not in this particular case, and how, I mean, this was an assassination. I just don't see them backing down from the death penalty in this particular case.
Sam, final thoughts on what you think we are going to see next in terms of him being in court. He's already had his first appearance, but anything you think we're going to be looking out for to be the next part of this case?
Whatever the result of the case is and however he's adjudicated and due to the nature of his crime, whatever remaining time he has left, whether it's through the death penalty or a life sentence, he will have the worst existence, and in my opinion, he will not live long in state prison.
Sam Mangle and Lindsay Richards, thank you so much. Sorry to have to cut you off, Sam, but we appreciate your analysis. We do have to hit our break. This is a case that we're going to continue to cover. It's one that's going to be closely watched, scrutinized, and even debated, especially because of its nexus with our First Amendment right, that Congress shall make no law abridging the freedom of speech or right to peaceably assemble. Kirk's death and the reaction to it has brought that issue to the forefront, reminding us just how sacred and valuable that protection is to speak opinions without government interference or physical attack. That's it for Vinnie Politan Investigates. I'm Julia Jenaé. We'll keep digging for answers as the investigation continues.